I love fresh, perfect beginnings, and I have 13 journals, each with only 2 pages filled out to prove it. Somehow, I don't think it's just the sharp, clean-cut page corners. Maybe it is the possibility of leaving a fragment of my conscience permanently onto a piece of paper that can be as fleeting as the purchase of a new notebook. But most definitely, this is just my long-winded way of saying that I don't have the fresh, perfect beginning of this speech. There are many things this speech could be about, many things that it could not be about, and a great possibility that there will not be a speech at all. I wasn't sure I wanted to do a senior speech, and that's only partly because every Game of Thrones episode ends on a cliffhanger. I've always struggled with the concept of authenticity. To me, not writing or giving a senior speech at all is better than giving a senior speech that is not completely, utterly me. So in light of my rampantly self-assured procrastination, my inability to put thought to Google Doc, and the fact that I don't participate in the honor code project, I'm choosing instead to plagiarize the words of others. These are the words that have helped me attempt to assemble my identity. Ones I believe, at least at this instant, truly quantify how I view the world around me. First, I'm a girl of 2 worlds. This was how Janelle Umana Limon began her memoir in a winter term class, Still Waters, my junior year. I remember how struck in the moment, unable to believe these 6 simple words, how these 6 simple words are able to sum up so much of my 16 years of life. I was born in Shanghai, China 18 years ago. I've been going to an American international school since I was 9. I'm the first in my family to be fluent in English, and I haven't exactly been able to completely understand my cultural identity since. While the world I grew up in celebrated the coming of spring and bowed down to the elders of the family, the world I'm currently a part of seeks ye first in the kingdom of God. Sometimes, my 2 worlds seem to be so far apart that I could barely reach both of them with the tips of my fingers. Other times, both my worlds clash into each other with such ferocity that it breaks my head to determine which one is more important. It bothers me that I know more about American politics now than the politics of my own country. I struggle with the fact that I oftentimes feel too Americanized in China, but I will always remain just another Asian face in America. I hate the term whitewashed because it invalidates my right to formulate my own unique cultural identity. But I can't help thinking sometimes that maybe I am quote unquote whitewashed. Somehow, despite all of my frustrations, in the past 4 years, the extremities of the culture I grew up in and the culture I'm immersed in every day have begun to mediate under the support of my family and friends. All mothers are slightly insane, but my mother more than most. She was the one who answered patiently my spew of fervent messages during my summer internship writing for a Chinese education news platform. She worked with me on my professional Mandarin vocabulary, patiently corrected spelling mistakes in my articles, and reassured me again and again that I don't sound like a 2nd grader. On the other hand, being a part of Brooks has allowed me to recognize my Chinese roots on an unprecedented level. There's nothing like a daily routine filled with chicken that'll make you want to fight more for spicy wontons. I can't even begin to explain how appreciative I am of every mid-September when I take the trek down to the Stewarts for the Moon Festival. The time I tried and somewhat succeeded in recreating Shanghainese soup dumplings with Tianshu. And every single time Ms. Stewart cooks an impeccable meal and asks me how she can improve it. My second quote comes from The Catcher in the Rye. Everyone who knows me knows that I will fight anything and anyone to defend Holden Caulfield. In the midst of all of his teenage angst and whinings, he writes, "When you're not looking, somebody will sneak up and write 'fuck you' right under your nose." Bold statement. However, what I have come to realize is that oftentimes you're the person who is choosing to pick up the permanent marker and write "fuck you" under your own nose. There were significant periods of time in the past 4 years when I find myself obsessing over every single small detail of every single social interaction ever, to a point in which I couldn't stand to be around other people, but I also couldn't bear to face myself alone. I feared the judgment of others around me, strangers, friends, family, teachers. I felt like I was in a never-ending game of paranoia, except in this one, my own conscience is not a safe zone, and I'm not friends with the game master either. I felt like I couldn't trust anybody because nobody could understand what I was feeling. Arguably, the most impactful moment of my 4 years at Brooks happened last year in the Lehman Art Gallery. After the conclusion of the Spider's Soliloquy exhibition. To those of you who don't know what it is, the Spider's Soliloquy exhibition centered around mental health and isolation, the feeling of being the spider in the midst of people afraid to approach you. As I listened to my fellow classmates share their thoughts about these topics, my heart grew fast and I could almost feel the blood drain out of my face. I helped organize the exhibition in order to help those around me, but I didn't realize that I was trying to remedy something that I had suppressed for all of my life. Growing up in a society that refused to acknowledge mental illness, I never believed that depression or anxiety could plague my family and friends. Up to that moment, I didn't want to remember all the nights my mother spent crying over the smallest things, the way that sleeping pills and Xanax became regular household items, or even the terrifying hope every time I stepped inside that these household items wouldn't take away everything and everyone I love. These were things that I refused to acknowledge to myself, because being truthful meant that I was validating their existence and impact on my life. I've never been one to open up easily, but the more walls I built up, the less secure I felt. We often confuse negativity with being realistic, and so I hid behind this superficial concept of just being realistic. I thought maybe if I set up a low enough expectation for all things, I wouldn't be as disappointed or hurt if things go awry. But it wasn't the judgment of others I feared, but the judgment from myself. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do is be honest with myself, whether it was about mental health in my family or my own identity. Being a part of the Spider's Soliloquy exhibition made me realize that being truthful with oneself is essential for growth and change. I finally understood that I need to give myself the space and time to be authentic instead of writing "fuck you" under my own nose and calling it a day. I admit this is a work in progress, and frankly, giving this speech about this topic in front of my friends and others I don't know as well terrifies me to the core, but I really hope it is the right decision. The third quote, a quote in my opinion might just be the most beautifully constructed sentence in all of literature, is from The Great Gatsby. Whether you read the book, Spark Noted it, or simply watched it on Netflix, it's hard to forget the moment when Nick Carraway stands in an empty street, looking up at himself at the party. I was within and without, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life. Life at Brooks has shown me what Fitzgerald refers to as the inexhaustible variety of life. I remember the first time my parents came to watch me, number 10, at one of my JV hockey games. When I went up to them, they seemed so genuinely proud that I almost didn't have the heart to tell them that they were watching number 10 from the varsity game. I remember Stella showing the entire dinner table after every trip we take with the Great Outdoors winter term, videos of me tragically falling. I have fallen in every possible terrain ever, but at least I haven't broken my pinky yet. I remember telling Emily that I didn't put on any perfume that day, and she decided to compensate by dousing me with lemon-scented Febreze. I remember reenacting 250 AP Art History artworks with Trami. I remember winning my first tennis match and being more shocked than happy. I remember telling Marty that if his unicycling club makes me not able to have children in the future, I will come after him. I remember meeting Sarah Fleischman's hairless cats and pretending to like them. These past few years have pushed me to try and do things I would have otherwise never done before. And every time I am in the dining hall for 3 hours, again, I am both within and without, looking out at myself engaged in yet another ridiculously irrelevant, yet very important conversation. One of the most fascinating concepts I've learned in my Brooks career is the unreliable narrator. Holden Caulfield is, and I am no exception. I struggle with being authentically myself, and I concede that my perception of reality is inherently skewed. You may not agree with how I view the world and my experiences in it, and there's no reason that you should. Everybody sees what they want to see, believe what they want to believe. We are the holders of our own strings, the manipulators of our own mindset and experiences. However, at the end of the day, my narrative may be unreliable, but at least it's mine. Thank you.